Okay, good afternoon. So today's all about string processing. So we've had a bit of practice on this in questions 5 and question 6 as you were preparing for and going through the mock exam for paper 2. We need practice on reading lines in from a file, splitting those lines wherever you come across a comma or any other character, but it tends to be a comma because we have those CSVs, comma separated values, and then either loading data in from a 2D data structure or storing values into a 2D data structure. If you can do today's lesson, then questions 5 and question 6 of paper 2 are a doddle. And those questions 5 and question 6 are designed to really stretch the most able students across the country. So chatting to other schools, other teachers from other schools, they said most of their students struggled with question 5 and question 6. You are doing exceptionally well in year 10 to have covered this, and some of you have mastered it already. So we do need to do some working with text files, particularly recognizing that \n that we talked about last week, the new line constant. Remember we talked about typewriters and why they're designed in that the QWERTY layout, and the difference between a new line and a like a reposition character. We have, if you remember, the Word document, the CT thing, that was at CT26 last week. We had to read it in, but we were left with this nasty array that was just some text and a comma, some text and a comma. And we went much further than that, but not everybody fully understood it. So this is a recap to make sure that we can split this up every time we have a comma and deal with it properly. So in the PLS, you know that you can have a string, any old string, and split it. You pass in a parameter. To me, this looks rather rude. I can't get that picture out of my head. Just looks like a bottom to me. Don't know why. But we split it every time we have a comma, and then you can get all of the different parts. So for example, you split this when you have a comma, you're going to end up with a list of 1, 2, 3, 4 values. But before we split it, we have to trim it. So I always get confused between stripping and splitting. Stripping is getting rid of the stuff we don't want, like the \n off the end, and splitting is where you specify how you want to separate it. So that's it really. Let's have a look at the Word document. You need to open up CT27. First activity for this one just gets you to predict. So I haven't given you a link to the code for this. You've just got the input data. The output is going to be a list. So you're going to have to put the square brackets and the individual strings that you think you're going to end up with, as in you're going to end up with a 12 and then Alice and then Avery, etc, etc, etc. I'll pause you in a few minutes to see how you're getting on. So please don't make the mistake of thinking that because this looks like a number, Python's going to automatically convert it to an integer. If you have a string, as in string of characters in quotation marks, and you split it every time you come across a comma, even though it's got numbers in, it's still going to be treated as a string. So I do want to take some time to go through part B of activity 1. It gives you a link to create with code, and I want to make sure that you understand how to use breakpoints, but we're also going to use breakpoints in Thonny so that you know how to do this in your paper 2 exam. So the question paper says set a breakpoint on line 11. A breakpoint is a blob in the gutter. So you click on the line number, and it's a point where the program is going to pause when it gets to that line number. So I'm going to run it, and the program has not executed line 11 yet, but it's paused at that point so that we can see the contents of all of these things. So let's make this a bit bigger. Yeah, will it go as big as it can? Can we see it a little bit more? If you kind of click that little plus, we should be able to scroll across. It's not great, is it? So we can see the original string for user data, and then we can see the user records. Let's see the whole thing is now a list, which has been separated. So you can test your predictions. I like to make sure that you know how to do this in Thonny as well, because you won't have access to create with code in your exam. It's the same idea. You click on the line number. You've got to double click on the line number in Thonny to get that red blob. But it won't pause automatically when you run. It will just go straight past it. If you want to pause at a breakpoint, you've got to not do the normal run. You've got to choose one of these, and I really like the debug current script nicer, Control F5. This will run it until it gets to a breakpoint, but it won't necessarily automatically show you these variable windows. We've got to see it. So view, and can we see variables? Oh, there we go. That's better. So now at this point we can see the user record contains a list containing 12 and Alice and Avery and June and 1999. You can check your predictions. Just in case you didn't get that. Oops. Double click to get your breakpoint. Then you have to go run and debug current script. I can't do it because I haven't saved it yet. There we go. Run and debug. And then, come on, breakpoint, run, debug current script. There we go, and then view and variables. Just want to pause on part C for a moment. It says you probably wouldn't want to use the third set. What is the third set? It's this one. It's where we're splitting by a space. You could, if you want to get all of the words separately, which is what it does. But if you want structured data, you want to use a character. Remember, a character is just an individual part of a string, digit of a string, I suppose. You want to use a character that doesn't occur in normal sentences. So a semicolon is okay. A comma can be okay, and is what we tend to use. But you need to make sure your data is set up in the right sort of way. Activity 2 talks about a prim activity. If you've not come across that before, it's kind of what we've done already. It's predict, write down what you think is going to happen. So that will be predict. And then you run it, you get the code and you compare your prediction with the actual run. Investigation, there's a couple of things to try and work through. And then modify, some things to try and change. And then make something yourself. So it's very similar to what we did last lesson, really, but just guided much more appropriately. So that this time, we're splitting up the data every time we have a comma, so that we can then use string formatting to display it. Right, then we've got a couple of minutes left in the lesson. Can you make sure, please, that your Word document is saved in your Topic 1 and Topic 6 folder? And we're going to upload it to Half Term 5, Algorithms and Programming 5 on the BLE, please.